Sometimes to get out of a bad situation, you need to live the worst. Yeah, this is what this story is all about. I hated traveling to my grandparents' farmhouse in the summers, and it was all because of Aunt Velma, my mom's first cousin. She was a little too touchy with me. She gave me creepy smiles and searched for moments to hug me for no reason. She would play with my hair, and when no one was looking, even whisper into my ear, "Someone's getting handsome each year. Would you mind if I played with you before the girls got to you?" Yeah. She was disgusting. I avoided her like a plague, but in the summer of 2008, my mom told me I'd be joining Aunt Velma on a fishing trip at the lake down the creek. I was scared. I didn't want to go, but I couldn't say it to my mom. I guess I was too shy and underconfident to realize I was submitting to abuse. My dad drove us to the lake, and I still remember he asked me if everything was all right. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry that no, Dad. She is evil. She's a witch, but again, I kept quiet, thinking everyone would blame me if I created a scene. Within 5 minutes, we got onto the Cuddy cabin boat. I sat quietly in the corner while Aunt Velma drove the boat to the middle of the lake. She constantly looked back at me and smiled like she had finally got me in her grasp. "Why do you look so scared, Samuel? You know I'm not gonna hurt you, right?" I smiled awkwardly, hearing my aunt's cold voice. We stopped when we were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees and water. One by one, she hooked the fishing rods, and I prayed to God, please let this trip end soon. But God had different plans. The first bass she hooked gave me a little joy, thinking the fishing would keep her hands off me. But suddenly a gush of cold wind gathered dark clouds above us, and a thunderstorm started. The raindrops were so big and perky that I was scared it would break the roof of the tiny cabin on the boat. Aunt Velma quickly got inside the cabin with me and said, "I guess we'll have to wait till the storm wears off. How about me and you talk for a while?" I got to see lust igniting behind her raven eyes and crooked smile. What do you want to talk about?" The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm inside my heart. "I don't know, how about girls? Have you seen any? Any without clothes?" She was asking me all sorts of uncomfortable questions while slowly scooching closer to me. Just when we were inches away, something big hit our boat. The motion was so strong that it almost topsy-turvied us. "Whoa, what was that?" Aunt Velma got up with a flashlight. Due to the storm, it was getting dark, so we could barely see around us. "Maybe we should just go back. Mom will be worried, you know." I fumbled. "Why would she be worried? She knows you're safe with me, Samuel. You know that too, right?" My aunt grinned while emphasizing the last line. Just then something hit the boat again, and this time so hard that one side of the boat bent down real close to the water level. Aunt Velma slipped and fell on the water due to this unexpected commotion. Samuel, give me your hand. It's too deep. I can't swim," she screamed while trying to stay afloat in the storm. I stood on the edge of the boat and watched her struggle. I knew she would die if I didn't help, but something inside my head whispered to me, "Let her go. Let the storm take her away. Sam, help me, please." She kept on screaming while kicking her legs and throwing her arms out of the deep water. "Sam, please. I'm sorry. Okay. I won't. Her voice died down, and then she was nowhere to be seen. I sat inside the boat, cold and scarred, not knowing how will I go home. But then I heard my dad's voice and a speedboat. My dad came for us, knowing how dangerous it would be to find our way back home in this thunderstorm. But when he got to me and found me alone in it, he looked confused. That was the first time I lied to my dad. I told him the storm hit the boat and we both fell into the water. But even though Aunt Velma saved me from drowning, she couldn't save herself. I was only 11 years old, so everyone was convinced that no way I could save my dying aunt. But the story doesn't end here. That evening, when I was driving back from the lake in that storm, I saw something lurking in that dark water. It looked like a human being, but it had a big tail. It swam to depths after peeking its head out of the water just enough for me to see its forehead and eyes. It had green, soggy skin like the algae in the water and huge glowing eyes. Whatever it was, it saved me that day and the days to come in my life. It saved a boy from succumbing to abuse. This incident goes back to the time when I used to work as a pizza delivery guy in Domino's. It was the mid of July. I was driving back after delivering the last order when the storm hit. If I was in a car, I would have pulled it down the road and waited for the storm to be over, but it was just an old scooter. My battery had already died down, so my only option was to find a shelter for the night. After 10 minutes into that storm, I found a house. Drenched like a street dog, I knocked on its door. No one answered. I knocked again, this time calling out, "Anyone home?" Still no answer. Lightning flashed right behind me, so I turned around to check if my scooter was okay. Once I turned back, an old woman was standing in front of me. "Whoa, hi." I fumbled because I didn't hear her open the door. Her eyes were grayish due to age, and she had 4 to 5 teeth left in her mouth. There was a bald spot on her head with thinning hair till her shoulders. I didn't order pizza. I have no teeth to chew things anymore. Hee. No, ma'am. I was hoping to stop here for the night. I don't see any motel nearby, and my phone has. Sure. Come on in. She led me into a living room that had a weird reeking smell. She told me to sit down and went to the kitchen. After 5 to 7 minutes, she brought a cup of tea and a towel. "I thought you might need this." Thanks. I'm sorry to bother you like this." "Oh no, dear. Not at all. Stay as long as you want. I've empty rooms upstairs. Trust me, it won't be a problem." As creepy as I felt in her presence, I was really tired, so I agreed. The woman took me to a room, and it was not bad, at least not for a night. She gave me a pair of loose pajamas and a Hawaiian shirt that she said belonged to her late husband. I locked the door and rested my head on the warm bed. Sleep came in seconds. I don't recall the time, but I woke up to pee. The storm had stopped by then. As I made my way to the bathroom, I walked past another room on my left. 2 voices were coming from the room. One was of the old woman and the other was a man. Wait, didn't she say she lived alone? I placed my ear on the door to hear what they were saying. I know, right? Who would have thought food would come to us amidst a storm? It's been so long since I've tasted human meat. Remember the times we used to go hunting for hitchhikers and solo travelers in those woods? Yes, darling, those were the days. You taught me how to skin a fresh body under the moonlight. Oh, so magical. If only I wasn't in this wheelchair, I would have cut the fillet of that boy. Damn, he looked tasty when I saw him walk in from that gate. Can't wait, Martha. Just grab the knife and put him to sleep forever. Let me get the big knife from the kitchen then. I was shivering again, but not with the cold wind, but with fear for my life. I ran down the stairway, dressed in the clothes of a cannibal husband given to me by his cannibal wife. I didn't have time to wear my shoes. I stepped on the muddy puddle and wet grass and hopped onto my scooter. As I started the engine, I heard the woman scream from the porch, "Where are you going? I told you it's fine to stay, dear. Come back. Please, don't go." But I drove away without even looking back. I drove straight back to the apartment. My friend opened the door, not expecting me to dress like a clown standing at the door around 3 a.m. I rushed to my room and went under the covers to stop myself from trembling. I got a fever the next day and had to take leave from work. The next day when I joined back, I specially requested the manager to alter my shift. I didn't want to do the night shift anymore. Cut to 3 months after encountering a cannibal couple of old freaks. I saw a news on the internet. 2 days back, a homeless man broke into this old house to spend the night, and he found an elderly couple dead upstairs due to starvation. He informed the cops, and when the cops came, they found something more they didn't expect. There were 2 rotten corpses hidden under the living room couch, and several human bones piled up in sacks were hidden in the basement. From the cuts of the bones, the cops are certain that this couple were active cannibals who are responsible for almost 30 to 45 missing person cases. I got saved because they were old and weak, otherwise who knows what they would have done to me. My dad is definitely hiding something from me. Every morning when I wake up and go downstairs, I see him washing his hands vigorously as if he is trying really hard to get them clean. My dad and I are really close. I don't have many friends. We used to live in the town, but after my mom's death, our life changed. I tried to socialize to distract my mind from this unfortunate event, but everyone I made friends with disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances. After that, my dad bought this new house on the outskirts, and since then it's just the 2 of us. I am now used to this loneliness because I don't know why my dad doesn't take it nicely when I try to talk to others. He even warned me one day that if I tried to make contact with others, he would lock me in my room. But trust me, he is a really nice guy. I know he means no harm to me. He just cares about me too much and doesn't want to lose his darling daughter. But with more time passing, a gut feeling is telling me he is hiding something very sinister from me. My dad wakes up very early and leaves for his morning walks. He likes nature outside and jogs almost for an hour. I am mostly asleep at that time. I wake up exactly when he returns home from his morning walk. As soon as he gets home, he goes to the kitchen sink and starts washing his hands. This is one of his habits, but this never made me feel weird until this morning. Today, when I woke up and went downstairs, I noticed red stains on his hand. I don't know why, but I felt he had drops of blood on his hands. I am starting to doubt him now. Why did he have blood on his hand? I wanted to ask him, but I couldn't gather the courage to do so. After washing them off, he made me some delicious breakfast. I was surprised to see him behave as if nothing happened. But I know he is doing something really bad in the name of those early morning walks. My suspicion grew stronger this evening. I was watching TV with my dad sitting in the living room when the news flashed. A truck driver was found dead near the Spring County woods. Cops are suspecting he was murdered in a very brutal way. Someone stabbed him to death and then snatched out his eyes. His truck was found on the highway near the woods. The forensic team said that the time of his death fell between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. No one has the slightest idea why he went to the woods to stop his car at that hour. Did someone lure him into the woods to murder him this way? No one knows yet, but the police department is investigating. Before I could see the entire news, my dad changed the channel as if it was making him nervous. I don't know what's going on inside his head. I am starting to become scared of him now. Night passes. Next morning, my father didn't go for his morning walk today. I heard sirens of cop cars patrolling this entire area. I don't think my father can harm anyone, then why is he so scared to go out after this murder? I have decided to confront my dad today. This silence is killing me. Dad, you didn't go for your morning walk today. No, but why? What is that having to do with you? Go eat your breakfast. No, I was just thinking it is a bit weird, that's why I asked. What's weird? You missed your morning walk. You never miss your morning walk. Molly, is there something you want to tell me? I noticed his face turning pale as he asked me this question. I don't know why my questions were making him so nervous. His entire behavior changed after this murder was reported. Dad, I have been meaning to ask you something for a long time now, but I am scared how you will react. You are scared me, Molly? The way he asked me this, I realized how much my words shocked him. I mean, I am his world. He had made sure I was always under his care and love. I am sure he could never believe that his loving daughter could ever suspect him. But I knew I had to confront him now. The time has come because I have had enough. I wanted to ask him, how did Mom fell from the stairs? I wanted to ask him how my 3 friends went missing and 2 were later found dead. 1 choked to death in the town dumpster and the other drowned in the local lake. I wanted to ask what happened to my other friend. Where is he? Is he alive or is he dead too? But before I could get all my answers, our doorbell rang. I noticed my dad's eyes getting wider in an unknown fear. He slowly walked to the door and opened it. A man dressed in formal was standing at our doorstep. He had a sharp-looking face with scanning eyes. "Hello, sir. I am Detective Branch. I am working with the police department. We are interviewing everyone in this area for the gruesome murder of the truck driver. May I ask you some questions?" "Molly, go to your room." "Oh no, let her be here too. Maybe she also can say something useful." "Come on, young lady. Let's sit down and talk." I have never seen my dad more scared than at this moment. Something in my heart kept telling me my dad knew things that he didn't want to reveal. Detective Branch sat down on the couch in our living room. My dad sat beside him and I sat down on a chair next to him. My heart was beating fast now. He looked at my dad and said, "So how long have you been living here?" "6 months." "I see. How many members are there in your family?" "Just me and my daughter." "And your wife?" "She died 6 months back." "Oh, I am sorry. If you don't mind, may I ask, how did she die?" She fell down the stairs." "Another unnatural death then." "I see. What do you mean by that, detective?" I could see my dad getting impatient and angry with this man. The detective smiled and looked at me. "You are Molly, right? How do you know my name?" "I went to your school." "My school? Why?" "Molly, do you know what happened to your friends?" "Yes, they died and one of them disappeared." "Did the same person who killed this truck driver kill my friends as well?" "Yes." "Jam avraitso." "But I have even more scary news for you." "What? What is it?" "You know who is doing all this, Molly, don't you?" "What? What do you mean? Why would I?" "Dad, what is he trying to say?" I could feel my veins popping out in fury and my head throbbing in terrible pain. My dad got up and screamed, "Go to your room, Molly. You get the hell out of my house. We don't know anything about these murders. Come on. Mr. Johnson, how long will you act like a fool and pretend nothing is happening? I have checked the CCTV footage of the night the truck driver got murdered. I have seen who stopped his truck and lured him into the woods." Their argument was heating up. Meanwhile, I couldn't bear this excruciating pain in my head. I jumped from my seat screaming at the top of my lungs, and then everything went black. When I woke up, I saw the entire house was silent. My father was dragging something away. As my vision adjusted, I saw he was dragging the bloody corpse of the detective Branch into our basement. He had no eyes, just like that truck driver. "Molly, you are awake. Go wash your hands now. We don't have much time. We have to leave right now." As I looked at my hands, I saw it was red with fresh blood, and I was holding something in my fist. I slowly opened it, and there they were, a pair of torn-out eyes lying in my hand. I calmed down and uttered to myself, "Don't worry, Molly. Dad is going to take care of you. He always does. He did it after Mom died. He did it after Cindy was found in the dumpster. He did it after Joanna drowned in the lake. He did it after Jason was pushed from the cliff. He did it after the truck driver got stabbed. He will do this time as well." A spinning top, a blur at first, then settling into a rapid, humming focus. Mom spoke a language that we gathered and pieced together, tested and retested until we got the desired results. Images lacked context, seemed to drift from us the longer we stared. There was an embedded familiarity within the walls of the house, the fear and breathless wonder that came from looking out of the window in the living room, the thin brown arms reaching across, the creatures that came to rest every morning. Trees, birds. We didn't have names for these things yet. Still, they called. Our first bed was the carpet, root beer-colored, too thick for the vacuum to plow through. It was tall enough to bury us. The fibers bowed as Mom kneeled. Her body crumpled inward, weight against her elbows, palms flayed out. She spoke, begging, but it wasn't until much later that we realized the words weren't being offered to us at all. Scale felt foreign to us before she picked each of us up, allowing our bodies to occupy the space between palm and fingers. Her eyes tracked, scanning, waiting. Later, we could hear her in her bedroom, her restlessness hemorrhaging through the ceiling. We wondered why she wouldn't sleep, what she was thinking about, if she was still waiting. Questions surfaced like spoiled cream to be dispersed and gulped. We spread out across the house, filing into forgotten corners. The expansion offered silence, little else. The couch, the lamps, the boxes of cereal left on the kitchen table. We wanted them to be brothers, to have their own voices, to answer us. We begged them to tell us where we came from, what we were supposed to do. The naivety embarrasses us now, a childish appetite, but the isolation was real because we felt it, because our belief in it made it so. We planned our expeditions, short distances, only while Mom was at work. Each day we covered a different area of the house, returning to the living room as if we hadn't moved all day, had waited patiently for her return. We kept our perceived rejection a secret. Looking back, it's clear that it started early, that there were things we didn't want her to know, that we were already hiding parts of ourselves. A routine, details shaped and reinforced by habit. Single crumbs of bread, eaten from an outstretched finger. Gentle figure eights with a toothbrush. Eventually, we migrated upstairs for bed, aggregated in a box on Mom's nightstand. Our table-mate was a glass of water, filled, but never drank. We slept an hour, less than. It was all our little bodies needed. The rest of the night, we watched Mom as she rolled and shifted, trips to the bathroom and back. Her sleep mask slid upward for glances at her phone. Mom slept with the blankets up to her neck, a torn piece of gray cloth in her right hand. She once told us it used to be a stuffed animal, one from her childhood, a bear in a former life. The rag was all that was left, a remainder gathered when you take reality and divide it by time. She held it up to her nose as she struggled to sleep, the smell offering a comfort we couldn't understand. She never explained, never tried. We didn't ask, so we never knew. Came in waves. We wanted to know, but then lost the desire in the flow of the routine, our actions mechanical, wrote. How could we understand that it wasn't this way for everyone, wasn't normal? Normal is what you know. We knew the house, we knew each other, we knew Mom. We had our own normal. Still, it sharpened in our ears, like gravel, like something choked and dispelled, circling when a confrontation with Mom was discussed. It reminded us of a sound. When we were only seconds old, we heard it bleeding from Mom's eyes, crying. When we learned the name, it felt wrong in our mouths, too round, too mercurial. Not that we had a better word in mind. We suspected there wasn't one, that some things were truest when unnamed. Some of us couldn't take hearing the crying again. It's because we love her that made a confrontation necessary was the proposed rebuttal. The truth, however painful, was keeping us apart. We voted. Everything came out at once. We were on her lap, all of us, looking up at her eyes, lead-dotted and damp. She told us about the imposed solitude, the feeling of being unanchored, the decaying half-life of time. It came from a book bought from an old lady at a flea market. She showed us the book, the first and only time we'd be given the privilege, a sticky note marking the page. Later, it would occur to us that those bound pieces of paper were our father of sorts, a naughty metaphor that only further embedded the distance we adopted as our birthright. It was meant to bring companionship, Mom told us. She had read the words just as written, but still something had gone wrong. Magic was funny like that, she said. That we were given life was a mix-up, a mistake. The best mistake I ever made. She told us. Then, as if reflex, she gathered all of us into her arms at once. Felt warm, felt good, felt like love. The routine evolved. Mom taught us symbols, the words on paper. We first learned to read books with pictures. Mostly animals who made mistakes learned lessons. After a while, the pictures disappeared and the words compounded. Mom's favorite book to use for lessons was called the Bible. We liked the stories of power, of nature controlled, of plagues summoned. We read it like any other book, it only occurring to us later that Mom saw this God as real, believed herself to be the same as us, just as small, just as helpless. There was a hierarchy, a ladder to climb or descend, and Mom was at the bottom. We liked television better than reading. At first, most of the characters in shows looked the same to us, looked like Mom with their softened edges and shallow color palettes. We couldn't tell them apart. We liked cartoons best, especially a cartoon about a doll that transforms into a boy, who is eventually made real thanks to kindness and bravery. Mom must have sensed something, the gravity of the movie. It wore on her with each viewing. One day she asked us if we wanted to become real like the character in the movie, if that was our dream. It was maybe the 50th time we'd seen the movie, but we hadn't considered the possibility until now. We nodded, understanding the metaphor, even though we couldn't truly dream. Our sleep was simple, dark, empty. Mom was silent for a while before continuing. If you changed, became human like me, you wouldn't be who you are, she said, her words contended. Did we want that? Did we want to be something different? We told her no, that we wanted to be the way we were. We thought that that was what she wanted to hear from us, but there was a divergence. That night, for the first time that we could remember, Mom didn't take us to bed. We slept on the carpet, were there in the morning when she came down. She picked us up, fed us, carried on as if the previous day hadn't happened. Did she think we forgot? That we didn't notice? So we let her believe this. We stopped watching the movie about a boy who becomes real. Besides, we had started liking other television by then. The difference in the faces was becoming easier to identify, sharpening, disparate elements culled and assembled in front of our eyes. Things were taking shape. While Mom went to work, our trips throughout the house became more focused, more purposeful. What we found was the remnants of someone. A life lived and then abandoned, settled between the walls like dust. There were traces of it in the house, clothing items kept but never worn. Books we knew she would have never purchased herself, pictures hidden in boxes. It was in the pictures that we found clues, snippets of the woman who made us, what was truly in her, what she had passed on to us. We found photographs, laid them out in what we perceived as the proper timeline. We used any visible markers we could find to place the chronology. The colors sharpening, the resolution increasing. Hair was sometimes helpful, but it refused to change linearly, going from long to short to long again, the brown darkening and fading, roots visible and then snuffed out. We made up stories about the other people in the pictures. There was an older woman who appeared often, squinted eyes behind thin-framed glasses, an unwilling smile like she was always looking right into the sun. There was also a man, puffs of red hair, never looking at the camera as if every image was captured without consent. Others appeared for a while and then disappeared somewhere in the space between photographs. What were they like? What happened to them? It made sense. One of these people must have been the one who left the hole that we were meant to fill. Or maybe it was everything. Maybe holes are dug by anything left behind, anything you couldn't take with you. I've made mistakes. Mom told us once, between sips of a bottle of something. We called them her bad nights, did our best to give her space. I don't want you guys to make my mistakes. We thought about the pictures we'd found, moments gone, people lost. Each one representing something incredible, a promising start until it wasn't anymore, a mistake formed in hindsight. But what she didn't realize was that the mistakes were hers, that she was allowed to make them. And for some reason that seemed like a beautiful thing to me. I told them. An integration plan spoken of, but never detailed. People are suspicious, Mom always told us. They can be evil, cruel. It had to be a slow process, and in the meantime, we were safest at home. Every few months we approached her, told her we were ready, that it was time, but she always felt like we had more growing up to do. I know you better than you know yourselves, she told us. So I decided to do it. 2 other volunteers joined me, sliding into Mom's work bag, nestling under the lipstick and loose change and spilled cards from her wallet. We didn't leave the bag all day, just listened, Mom's voice coming in and out, the tone recognizable, but transposed, dirty jokes, a heady arch of a laugh exploding before the punchline was reached. It was exciting, but there was a sour edge to the revelation. Felt wrong, like hearing a secret not meant for us. Out there in the real world, I realized we weren't the only ones who were free. She didn't even notice that our ranks were short when she returned home. She had grown used to us, whatever version of us she could see, had allowed herself to see. It occurred to me that she only knew us in generalities. The image hardened and set in her head. We took shifts. Only once did I leave the bag. After I had learned Mom's schedule, knew she'd be gone on lunch. It was just for a few minutes before I walked back to the bag, returned to my place. The others asked me later what it was like leaving the bag, being truly out there, but I didn't have a good answer. It was more, I said, more than this. It wasn't an answer they seemed satisfied with. Why wasn't that enough? Mom found out, of course. We'd started taking turns in Mom's bag, going day after day. We must have known we'd be discovered, must have wanted it in some capacity. She wasn't angry, didn't do anything at first. She looked at us for a long time, a distance made clear, a ship fading over a horizon. For the first time, Mom could see that we weren't her, weren't an extension of her person. We were our own people, made our own choices, and with that realization came a kind of betrayal. The next day, Mom was late coming home from work. I thought maybe she was avoiding us, was still mad. But when she finally opened the front door, she held a brick-shaped box that looked like a present. She eased herself to the floor, hoisting her right leg with her hands, crossing it over the left. She leaned in, set the box in front of us. Mom's lips braced against her teeth as she spoke, her words crackling in a splintery alto. She told us it was time we saw something that it might help us understand who we are. We were given the choice to leave, look away, preserve our current reality. I stayed. The rest followed my lead. The box was opened to reveal a boy holding a blanket the color of the sky, thumb in mouth. He had our features, the same round head, same nothing eyes. It was us, except its limbs were petrified to its sides, body motionless, dead. We gathered around to see. But why? Why did we want to touch it? What did we think we'd find? Was it macabre? Like poking a dead animal, the edema a gauge of something lost. Maybe we wanted to know what we had, what we stood to lose. She had collected figurines like this, displayed them, cared for them, loved them. I can't say why you were chosen from all the things in the house to become alive, Mom said, but it means something. Her eyes seemed to bubble, solvent but steady. Her face mimicked the look she had when reading the Bible, the look of someone who believes, who has faith in the face of evidence to the contrary. "This is what you used to be," she told us, "not what you are." After that day, the figure disappeared, never again mentioned. I was glad it was gone, could see that it upset Mom. All it did was serve as a reminder of our past selves, of how Mom's mistake created us, of the debt I owed her. I tried to own that truth as best as I could. I lived with it, but I also understood that Mom couldn't do the same. I had my first dream a week before Mom died. I said nothing to the others, the first secret that was truly mine. I wanted to ask Mom what dreams were really like. I wanted to be certain. I thought I had time. Gently, in her sleep, I woke to her alarm screeching, begging to be acknowledged. We crawled out of our crate, gathered next to her. When I touched her arm, the skin was already different, like it had had its own life, like that was gone too. Maybe Mom was sick, something sudden. If she saw it coming, she could have kept it from us so we didn't worry. Maybe she was waiting for the right moment, for the proper way to tell us, and she just never found the words. No visible marks, no blood, no evidence that she did it to herself. We stacked ourselves on top of each other to reach the medicine cabinet in the bathroom to investigate. Bottles of liquid, pills, rows of orange containers with names we didn't recognize. What if it were because of us? Because of something we did or something we could never do? I decided silently that it was a virus or some kind of accident, something sudden, something unintentional. I couldn't believe she knew and didn't make arrangements for us to be taken care of. She created us. She was our mother. She couldn't have killed herself because of something we did, couldn't have done it at all. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. She had earned that much. We didn't know what to do with her body, how to remember her, to honor her. We spread out and pulled her blanket up to her shoulders. We took the remnants of the stuffed animal she slept with, placed it next to her face. That piece of cloth was as close to a sibling as we had. Could stay with her when we couldn't. There were calls. Maybe her work wondering why she didn't show up, or a concerned relative. Mom's sister or a mother who we never got a chance to meet. I wondered if these people were our family as well, if that's something earned at birth or a gift, one to be given or withheld. We huddled in the living room. What would Mom would have told us to do? What would she have wanted for us? The hollow echo of the question reminded me that we weren't completely separate from Mom, that she took something from us when she left. I found this comforting, knowing that there were parts of us to take. We realized that only Mom had known about us, that we didn't have to reveal our true nature to those who were bound to come looking for Mom. Some liked this idea of climbing up on a shelf, becoming figurines again. The group was split down the middle. Already I could feel the hole forming from the things I couldn't take with me. It was an experiment, fun at times, but mostly messy and painful, is what the other half told us. This was easier, better. I watched half of us climb onto a shelf, silent, trying to become what we once were. Maybe a stranger wouldn't know the difference, but I could see it, an unease giving them away, like the memory of movement. Because they may not be human, but they weren't figurines either, because the change had already happened. And there was no way to completely go back. Out there, beyond the front door, is more than this, I told the others as we waited, a reminder of what was out there, the possibility of something else. Good, bad. It would be ours, together and separately. More was all I could promise. We speculated what people would think, if strangers' eyes would make us into something different, more like Mom or perhaps less. Would our humanity evaporate in the hands of those who didn't understand us, didn't want us? We sat for a long time, but eventually the waiting ended. I heard it, the noise outside the door, the banging, then the edgeless thud of the door being forced open. There was a strip of bright at first, and then the slow, reluctant swing of the door, a light that cracked open the room. It greeted us like a question asked, waiting for an answer, patient, ready whenever we were. In the end, she goes to the bar on her own. It's the first one she comes across after she storms out of the office. She's seen it before, of course. She sees it every time she takes the same route back to her house, but she's never set foot in it. It didn't seem like the right vibe, the right crowd. And she was correct, it isn't. She clashes as soon as she walks in. The beat of her high heels mismatches the mellow bluesiness of the music. Her corporate chic a false note amidst all the leather and torn jeans. But she isn't a giver-upper. This is the bar she chose to drink in, and she will see it through. She swallows down the flutter in her throat and orders herself a Cosmo. 2 sips in, she sees the jukebox man sitting in a corner, his lips slightly parted. She only realizes what he is when he takes a drink of water in the middle of a song and the music stalls briefly while he swallows. She watches him slide through his playlist effortlessly and with concentration until she finishes her Cosmo, and then she keeps watching. He's seen her too. As the hours go by, he makes it past the blues and onto sweeter songs about love and escape and dancing in the moonlight. When the bartender rings the last order's bell, she asks him if he wants to go home with her. He plays her a song full of yes. In the morning, she wakes up a minute before her alarm sounds. As always, the jukebox man is lying on his side next to her. His eyes are closed, but he's awake. One of the vinyls in his chest is spinning, but his mouth is shut, so she can't hear the music. Before leaving for work, she leans over and places a kiss on his lips. Then, she slips a coin into his slot and selects a song about goodbyes and what a good time we had. She does not expect him to be there when she gets back. At the office, she finds people irritate her even more than usual. Flo and her vapid flirting with the lawyers, Jonathan and his rotting food in the fridge, Sam and their constant tapping of their pencil on the desk. These are her colleagues. Sometimes she might even call them friends. But when they ask her for an after-work coffee, she refuses, thinking of her clean bed and her plump comforter. She doesn't think of the jukebox man in it at all. Yet she pushes her apartment door open slowly, as if the cat she doesn't own might make a run for it if she's not careful. The jukebox man is still there, sitting at her kitchen table. He has made dinner, linguine carbonara, a salad of fresh rocket and sun-dried tomatoes she bought last month and forgot about. He even opens a bottle of red and lights candles. He plays them a record of old Italian songs. She doesn't understand the words, but she knows they're sad and beautiful. She asks him if he can speak, and he says that he can but chooses not to. He prefers playing songs that convey his mood instead. Speaking is so fraught, he says. Words never say what I want them to. He sips his wine and she watches the red slip down the machinery of his throat. Music is better, he concludes, and that is the last time he speaks. They don't talk about moving in together, but the jukebox man never leaves her place. She doesn't know where he lived before. She doesn't mind him being around all the time, though, so she avoids questioning him about it, in case he takes that as her wishing him to leave. At work, people ask her to perform tasks that are outside her duties. Sit in on this call, take over that presentation, prepare this report. Normally, she would refuse, but now she shrugs and says, okay, thinking her colleagues poor, almost pitying them for the lack of poetry in their lives. She catches herself with music in her head. Some of it is the jukebox man's, and some of it is her own. Nobody knows about the jukebox man and how much music envelopes her now. She feels lucky, and a word she hasn't used since childhood. Blessed. In the mornings, he plays her pink martini, and she develops the habit of making him breakfast before she heads to the office, always at the exact same time. She jokes about that, sometimes about how regular, almost rhythmical, everything about her is, timed down to the minute. "What a pair we make," she says once. "The jukebox man and the metronome woman." He smiles as she brings a forkful of wilted spinach to her mouth. "I'm thinking of quitting my job," she says, and he responds in depeche mode. As weeks of living with the jukebox man turn to months, she finds herself drifting further and further away from her colleagues. She goes everywhere with him, and he regulates his music depending on context, dropping it down to a whisper or keeping his mouth shut in places where his constant humming draws odd looks, like the library or galleries. One Saturday, she even takes him to the farmer's market where she used to go with the gang before. They glimpse her from afar. Flo, Jonathan, and Sam are getting smoked salmon and Philly bagels in their matching shirts. They stare at the jukebox man for a few minutes. The neon linings, the shiny vinyls, the complicated tubing of his ribs. Unsure what to do. Then Jonathan raises an arm and waves. She doesn't wave back. What would be the point? She sees them whisper to each other as they walk away. "You know," she tells him then, "I never really liked them much." He monologues in Fadu the whole way home. On Monday morning, her boss calls her into his office and she braces. Hair pulled back, skirt smooth, battle face on. He motions her in with his shoulders unusually slumped, his hair ruffled instead of slicked back. He offers her a coffee, then a cookie, then a seat, and fumbles for words until finally she has to ask, "What is this about?" He sighs and says, "I can see you're no longer challenged by your job." A twinge in her gut, like a finger pulling on her navel. "Are you firing me?" He laughs at that, sincerely, truly laughs. "No, of course not," he says, showing her his palms. "This is a promotion. I hope you accept." She keeps the news from him, and she's not entirely sure why. Her boss was right. The job was not challenging for her anymore, but her new responsibilities keep her up at night, counting the shards of streetlight on the ceiling, composing emails and conducting conversations in her head. She's tired and stressed, and she responds the way she always did, by dividing out her time into little slots that she then proceeds to fill scrupulously and with held breath. She's at the kitchen table on a Sunday evening with her nose in court transcripts when he comes up behind her and wraps his arms around her shoulders, playing soft Elvis at her. "Turn it off," she snaps. "Can't you see I'm trying to work?" He closes his mouth immediately and retreats to the bedroom, records slowing down to a halt in his chest. She finds him hours later, his mouth still shut, his vinyl spinning quietly to himself. "I'm sorry," she says, but he turns and faces the window. She wishes she knew what song he played for comfort, but she doesn't find it in her to ask. He starts neglecting himself after that, spends longer and longer in silence, neither words nor music passing his lips, and he accepts no food. "You're scaring me," she tells him, and so he allows himself to be taken by the hand and deposited in the bath. She fills the tub and washes him carefully, driving the sponge over his curves and glass displays with a light but steady hand, her designer clothes a damp mess. Then, she dries him and takes out all of his records and cleans them one by one while he watches without sound. She keeps wiping. "You think I like it, this tight-lipped life?" she asks. At work, they throw her a promotion party. There are bubblies and canapes and everyone is in a good mood. There's a carpet of music she doesn't pay attention to. She's thinking of the jukebox man and his playlist, coaxed back into full volume with a slow meticulousness that she didn't think herself capable of. When people are sufficiently tipsy, ties loosened and heels kicked away, her boss finds her swaying in a corner and approaches. She tenses despite herself. "I need to apologize," he says. She stares at him and waits, unwilling to make this any easier for him. "For hitting on you," he says finally. It was inappropriate. Is this why the promotion? She asks. No, he replies, something categorical and almost surprised in his voice. That was because you deserve it. This is because I was a shithead. I'm sorry. I'll do better. Her job keeps her busy and interested, and she gets used to the jukebox man's music constantly on in the background. Until one morning she realizes that he has gone through all of his songs at least twice and is desperately cycling through them again in an effort to get her attention. The lyrics bounce off her, familiar and uneventful. The chords leave her cold. I'm sorry, she says. I don't have time for this. She leaves for work. That day she lies to him for the first time. She says she has to stay at the office late to catch up with neglected tasks. Instead, she goes to an expensive restaurant with her friends that she doesn't even like. They all order the scallops and she hums quietly along with the music without words. Her friends toast her success. She toasts back. He starts playing the same song over and over again. At first she thinks it's a whim, a lover's squabble that will soon pass. But the song persists, the music growing distorted, the lyrics hitching more and more. A malfunction, or a dysfunction, she's not sure. She calls in sick and takes him to the doctor. The jukebox man sings to her of a boy who wonders if he's a machine, of girls on the hill, of the cool nights when deserving is a thing one can be. The doctor shrugs. I can't help you, she tells her. I've never been taught how to cure a jukebox man. So she takes him to a mechanic instead. He regards the jukebox man and listens to his sorrowful song for a while, his head cocked to the side and his eyes closed. A tear escapes and trickles down the mechanic's cheek. He's afflicted, he says. I know how to fix a jukebox, but I wouldn't know where to start with a jukebox man. She thanks the mechanic, even though she's at a loss about what to do. They get into her car to drive back home. The doctor was an hour away, and the mechanic was 3 more. Halfway, she feels her eyelids drooping, and there is an ache in her knuckles from gripping the wheel. Let's get some coffee, she tells him. So they stop at the first roadside cafe they find. She orders them 2 flat whites and lets him pick the table. He sits in a corner under a naked light. When he opens his mouth and the song spills out, the other patrons turn to face them. Please stop, you're bothering everyone, she tells him, but an old guy from 2 tables over shouts, No, let him sing! And the barista tosses her lovely gray braid over her shoulder and pleads, Yes, let him do his thing. She does. The jukebox man sings his song over and over, his head tilted back and his eyes filled with glassy bliss. Nobody complains at the repetition. They even clap every time the song ends. When she gets up to go, he doesn't follow. For the first time in a long time, he looks content. The house feels empty without the jukebox man. The silence of her hours, an odd thing that she needs to teach herself to navigate again by only the metronome of her own heart. Work keeps her busy. Her friends keep her wined and fed. She drives through that area sometimes, and when she does, she stops at the cafe. The jukebox man is still there, in the corner, playing his melancholy song, a small adoring crowd at his feet. Isn't he a marvel? Someone always asks her, and she always says, Yes, yes, he is.